The critical period hypothesis is the subject of a long debate in linguistics and language acquisition about the extent to which the ability to acquire language is biologically linked to age. The hypothesis states that there is an ideal time window to acquire language in a linguistically rich environment, after which language acquisition becomes much more difficult and demanding. The critical period hypothesis establishes that the first years of life are the crucial time in which an individual can acquire a first language if presented with the appropriate stimuli, and that the acquisition of the first language is based on neuroplasticity. If language entry does not occur until after this time, the individual will never achieve full command of the language. There is much debate about the timing of the critical period for the SLA, with estimates ranging from 2 to 13 years of age. The critical period hypothesis is derived from the concept of critical period in the biological science, which refers to a specified period in which an organism must acquire a skill or ability, or that organism will not be able to acquire it later in life. Strictly speaking, the experimentally verified critical period relates to a period of time during which damage to the development of the visual system may occur. For example, if animals are deprived of the binocular input necessary to develop stereopsis. Linguistic competence. The discussion of the critical period of language is complicated by the subjectivity of determining native-like linguistic competence, which includes things like pronunciation, prosody, syllable stress, synchronization, and articulatory environment. Some aspects of language, such as phoneme tuning, grammatical processing, articulation control, and vocabulary acquisition, have weak critical periods and can be significantly improved with training at any age. Second language acquisition. The theory has often been extended to a critical period for second language acquisition (SLA). Although this is much less accepted, David Shingleton claims that when learning a second language, younger better in the long run, but points out that there are many exceptions. Nothing than 5% of bilingual adults are fluent in a second language, even though they start learning it when they are 5. In adulthood, long after any critical period has presumably come to an end.
Behavioral approaches, contrary to biological views, claim that languages are learned like any other behavior, thought conditioning. Skinner detailed how operant contrary informal connection with the environment thought interact and together with Urban Nauer applies idea to language acquisition. Nauer hypothesized that languages that acquire that reward an imitation of language models. The role model must have an emotional bond with the students, as imitation generates pleasant feelings that fusion a possible and reinforcement because new connection between behavior and environment are form and refinement that life, new skills, including language, can be acquired at any age. Universal grammar. Chomsky stated environment factors must be relatively unimportant to emergence of language, since many different factors surround children who acquire L1. In truth, Chomsky claimed that language learners possess innate samples that boil the language acquisition device in the brain. This principle denotes restrict possibility for variation within the language and allowing students to construct a grammar for raw data collected from the environment. Input alone cannot explain language acquisition because it is generated by characteristic features such as surrounded and lack recording from which a student discovers incorrect variations. Singleton and Newport demonstrate in the role of Yuhi in their study for Simon, and Simon learned as from his parent who had learned in a L2 after poverty and provided him with improved models. The results showed that Simon learned normal and logical rules and was able to build an organized linguistic system. There are other direction and factors problems in the research. One, affecting illiteracy. Two, bilingual proficiency. And two, age in learning. Acquisition of semantic functions. And the study have especially mentioned the acquisition of semantic function is the Weber, Fox, and Neville. Their results showed that Chinese English bilingual who had been exposed to English after poverty learned vocabulary in a higher level of proficiency than the syntactic aspect of the language. However, they do report the precision of judgment in detecting semantic anomalies was altered in subjects who were exposed to English after the age of 16, but were less affected than the grammatical aspect of the language. Evolutionary explanation. The Howard model, in order to provide evidence for the evolutionary functionality of the critical period in language acquisition, Harvard generated a computer simulation of the plausible condition of the evolving generator based on three central assumptions: language in evolution adaptation, that in naturally selected, the language in any individual can be acquired and measured, various aspects of maturation and development are other generative control, which determined that timing and critical period for center abilities. Conclusion. In the critical period, it assimilates time where an event can occur, and that results in some kind of transformation. In the environmental, psychological, and biology, a critical period is a phase in the life cycle when an organism has a higher level of sensitive to exogenous slim that are mandatory for the development of the particular ability. In the body doesn't receive equal stimulation during this period class, and it may be less successful or even impossible in performing some of the later life functions. The general idea is that the failure to learn a particular skill leads to be to cortical areas normally assigned to the function aren't used. As a result, these unused brain areas will eventually adapt to perform a different function and therefore will no longer be able to perform other functions. The coincidence of critical period for auditory, visual, and vestibular systems suggests that the time period may be universal for emerging sensor systems.